Hello, I'm Alexander Robinson, and welcome to Jackass. Okay, not really. Let's just start the intro again. Hello everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. So, Jackass Forever came out this weekend, and made #1 at the box office. It's really bringing in some money. And naturally, I should be reviewing this movie, because I have seen it, but the problem is, this is kind of a hard movie to review, at least on its own, because you can't really judge it based on story, character development, or all the other things you'd expect from a major movie. The best you can do is just talk about how funny it is, and if it made you laugh. But the thing is, I don't feel like there'd be enough to talk about with this movie alone to fill out an entire video. So instead, what I'm going to do is just do a compilation review of not only Jackass Forever, but the first 3 Jackass movies, from Jackass the movie in 2002 up until Jackass 3D from 2010. I won't be covering Jackass 2.5 or Jackass 3.5 because honestly, I barely remember 2.5, and I've only seen clips of 3.5 on YouTube. And I already reviewed Bad Grandpa on this channel when it came out in 2013. So this video in particular is just going to be focused on the 4 theatrically released Jackass movies. And when it comes to Jackass the movie, number 2, and 3D, I'll be talking about a lot of the stunts in detail. And with Jackass Forever, since it just came out, I won't be. I'll mention certain stunts that some of the cast do, but I won't go into full detail like I will with the stunts of the first 3 movies. But before we get started, I have to talk about my first exposure to Jackass, which is kind of reminiscent of how I was exposed to the Fast and Furious movies. I was exposed in reverse. So I never watched the show when it aired on MTV. My parents didn't allow me to watch MTV when I was younger, but surprisingly they allowed me to watch Spike TV and MXC, so clearly that was not a problem for them, even though that show, when you really think about it, in terms of a writing perspective, is much more gross than, and much more immature than Jackass. But one show that Spike TV had that piqued my curiosity once I got into my late teens was The Dudesons. The Dudesons is pretty much the Finnish version of Jackass. And in that show, you had 2 of the cast members from Jackass in there, Steve-O and Bam Margera. So the Dudesons did some stuff with Bam and the CKY crew as part of Bam's show Viva La Bam. So I was curious to see Viva La Bam and see those specific episodes with the Dudesons, but with Viva La Bam's perspective. Then that's when I really became aware of Jackass, and more specifically, the first movie. And this first movie is very interesting to watch 20 years later because, man, does the cast look pretty young. And it's just interesting to see all the stunts they come up with, since this is their first movie and they're allowed to do things that you can't do on TV. One of the biggest examples is when Bam Margera tries to get his mother, April, to say fuck. Because April's not one to get all crazy, but she can be a nervous wreck, mainly because her son drives her nuts. So, the scene with the alligator in her house, and she's just freaking out. It's like, throughout Jackass and even Viva La Bam, I feel so sorry for April, but you got to appreciate the fact that she is willing to put up with a lot of shit from her son. And that is absolutely commendable. And then when you get to Bam's dad, Phil, he's just so carefree that nothing seems to affect him. He's like, well, this is my son. Might as well just roll with it. So that's the main stunt, and I use that in quote fingers, that you couldn't do on MTV. Another stunt that they did that I'm pretty sure you couldn't do on MTV is the yellow snow cone, where Ehren McGhehey pretty much grabs some ice, puts it in a paper cone, pisses on it, and then eats it. And that is just disgusting right there. It's just... a lot of these stunts have 3 categories. The first category is that's stupid but somehow very clever and creative. The second category is that looks dangerous, but maybe not so dangerous to where I might want to try it, which, no, don't ever get in that mindset, kids. Don't ever think to yourself, I could do that stunt, because even then, I know there's some shit I'm like, that would probably hurt more than I'm imagining. But that's the second category. The third category is pretty much, why would you do that? And pissing into a ball of ice and eating it is one of those, now why would you do that moments? One of the stunts that's very much that looks dangerous, but maybe I could do that, is when Steve-O goes tropical pole vaulting. And, yeah, he lands into a table, he jumps off into the ocean, he jumps into a volleyball net, and, yeah, all that seems to hurt, but ironically, it's not as bad as when he jumps into a lake where there's a dead cat floating in the water, and that apparently gave Steve-O an ear infection, so that's plain gross, and Steve-O's face when he lands in that water and tries to swim out, it's like, oh, brother, I feel sorry for you. And it's also worth noting that this came out at a period of time where Steve-O was a full-blown cokehead. He truly was on coke. And there's another stunt that he performs, which is the wasabi snooters, where basically they filmed a lot of this movie in Japan. They did some stunts over there. One of them required a lot of wasabi. Steve-O's pouring soy sauce into it, mixing it up. Then he takes a straw and snorts it like it's cocaine. And as somebody who hates wasabi, just hates the way it tastes, and was actually tricked into drinking wasabi one time, unknowingly, it's another one of those, why would you do that? But when you find out that, yeah, he was a cokehead at the time, it makes a lot of sense. Which, by the way, I'm so happy that he has really turned his life around. Now, Steve-O has just became completely sober. God bless him for that. Then there's the famous alligator tightrope, where he's in a thong. He's trying to tightrope across a lake of alligators, unsuccessfully. And there's a piece of chicken hanging from his ass crack. One of the alligators grabs it, and then Steve-O bolts to shore, and then runs right into another one. Most of the stunts I've been talking about involve Steve-O, and I'd say in this entire movie, he's the one that steals the show, except for the final stunt of the film. But you have Dave England going into a department store, taking a shit as casually as possible, which that really, the stunt itself doesn't work entirely, mainly because I'm not really fooled by these hidden camera type stunts, because in any other instance, security would have dragged his ass out for shitting in one of the department store toilets, and everyone just seems so calm about it. However, the first time they try to do this stunt and it fails because Dave ends up shitting in the van, that's hilarious, because, like, wow, you couldn't hold it in, so you just let it go inside the van, and just the reactions to everyone, from Johnny Knoxville to the camera crew, on how disgusting that is hilarious. And speaking of Johnny Knoxville, he does some stunts as well, like the rocket skates, which don't entirely work. There's the tidal wave, which cracks me up every time I watch it, because Johnny Knoxville is just standing in one spot, and there's this huge wave that washes him away, and because the water is so thick, it's like there's this wave and Johnny Knoxville just disappears. Another Johnny Knoxville stunt is the riot control test, and if there's ever one thing that makes me laugh just as much as seeing these stunts, it's seeing the look of regret on all these cast members' faces when they realize, what am I doing? And that look of regret is even more prominent in Jackass 3D, but we'll get to that later. And then you have stunts like the rental car crash-up derby, the stunt where Johnny Knoxville, Bam Margera, Ryan Dunn, and Brandon DiCamillo from the CKY crew are just driving around in golf carts and just crashing them. You have the golf course air horn. You have just so many really fun stunts. And the big finale of them all is the butt x-ray. And as much as a cokehead as Steve-O was at the time, the fact that he had enough common sense to go, yeah, I'm not shoving things up my ass is I like how he has a limit. So Ryan Dunn ends up taking this little toy car, putting it in a condom, shoving it up his asshole, and then goes to get an x-ray of it. And there's one thing the Jackass movies know what to do best. It's to really end their movies on a great note. Like, the biggest stunt, the most outrageous stunt comes last. They know to save the best one for last. And if I had any problems with this first Jackass movie, it's that it very much looks like a TV show that they just put in theaters. The cameras they used look like TV cameras. It just doesn't feel like an actual movie. But on the whole, this first movie is a lot of fun. So then after Jackass the movie comes out, both Bam Margera and Ryan Dunn do their own show with the CKY crew, Viva La Bam, which I was a mega fan of at the time. I have since rewatched a few episodes, and while some of them are enjoyable, it's very much a reality show, and kind of a fake one at that, which the one thing I always liked about Jackass is that I always referred to Jackass as the most realistic reality show ever, because those injuries are not fake. A lot of stuff in Viva La Bam does feel very fake, and again, I enjoy some episodes, but it doesn't quite hold up as well. And then on the other side, Steve-O and Chris Pontius did their show Wild Boys, which was pretty much Jackass meets National Geographic. I haven't seen this show as much as Viva La Bam, but the few episodes I saw were pretty fun. Then in 2006, we finally get to Jackass Number Two, which I think is a much better sequel than the first Jackass. Mainly because, one thing, it actually looks more like a movie this time around. But also, I think the stunts in Jackass Number Two are more funny and just more, I don't know, they're just more out there and wacky. There's the fire hose rodeo, which is pretty nuts. There's the fish hook, which is probably my favorite stunt of the whole movie. It's pretty much Steve-O putting a hook inside his cheek and then being cast off into the ocean like he's some sort of shark bait. It's kind of mild, but just the idea of being in the water with all those sharks, and then all of a sudden for a Mako to pop up out of nowhere, it's like, that's hardcore. And the stunt ends with probably my favorite line of the movie. Thank you so much, God. Other stunts that stick out to me are the Valentine, which is just amusing because it's the crew reading this Valentine's note from a fan, only for there to be a spring-loaded boxing glove in the back of it, just going, like, that's funny, but I would not want to partake in that. The bungee jump with Preston Lacy and Wee Man is absolutely hilarious. There's the teeter-totter scene where Johnny Knoxville, Bam Margera, Ryan Dunn, and Chris Pontius are on a seesaw trying to avoid a bull that's trying to maul them to death. There's the butt chug that Steve-O does, which goes against his entire notion of, I'm not putting anything up my butt. There's how to milk a horse, which, one thing that the first movie didn't really do a whole lot was have a whole lot of gross out moments. I mean, there was the yellow snow cone, but milking a horse takes the cake, where they pretty much get horse jizz, and Chris Pontius casually drinks it. And I saw that clip on YouTube recently, and I just want to do nothing but vomit at that. There's the Anaconda ball pit, and much like I said with the first Jackass movie, Number Two saved the best for last, the terror taxi, which pretty much involves Ehren McGhehey dressing up like a terrorist. And you have to keep in mind that this came out 5 years after 9/11, so there's something a little, I don't know. I don't think a stunt like that would work nowadays, but the stunt works because they tell Ehren, look, you're going to dress up like a terrorist, get in a cab, and just prank this guy. But what they end up doing instead is that they bring in the director of The Dukes of Hazzard that Johnny Knoxville starred in to play the taxi driver. And they pretty much tell him, Aaron's going to be a terrorist. Just scare him. Act like you're about to kill him for being a terrorist. And on top of all that, we're going to give Ehren McGhehey a fake beard, but it's going to be nothing but our pubic hair. And one of us, who we won't say, has crabs. So that really is an intense stunt to end this movie with. But again, they know how to save the best for last. which brings us to Jackass 3D, which I talked about on this channel at one point. I mentioned that it was one of my favorite guilty pleasures of the last decade, and it actually might be my favorite of the three movies. Watching this movie in 3D was definitely an experience, and it was the first Jackass movie that I actually saw in theaters. Funny enough, I think the 3D in this movie holds up just as well as the 3D in Avatar. And that movie cost nearly $240 million as opposed to the $20 million that Jackass 3D cost. But the reason why this one in particular is my favorite is that they take full advantage of the 3D at almost any chance they get. But putting the 3D stuff aside, I just think the stunts are a lot funnier, mainly because the cast has gotten older. By this point, Steve-O has gotten sober, and he really does look miserable in a lot of these stunts. There's the T-ball in particular, where he has this look of nervousness on his face, and he utters the line, "Oh, why do I have to be Steve-O?" Which, that's funny. And then I'll just cut to the finale right now, the Poo Cocktail Supreme, which may be the ultimate Jackass stunt, and again, Steve-O just looks so miserable and so not willing to do it, but he does it, and God bless him for it. Because I don't think any sane person in the world would want to do the Poo Cocktail Supreme. They set up a porta potty to be a slingshot that goes up in the air, and they fill it with dog shit that covers Steve-O, and it's just gross. And there's a lot of times where you see that dog shit flying up in the air in slow motion, and given that this is a 3D movie, you can imagine how that looks. Another series of stunts that utilizes 3D is the Rocky, where somebody comes up from behind, mainly Bam Margera, with a glass of water to, like, pour into the face of a cast member, an unsuspecting cast member, and then on the other side, he'd swing in with a boxing glove and punch the guy, basically to simulate those Rocky fights where when somebody gets punched, sweat goes flying off. And that's a stunt that it's creative in terms of utilizing the 3D, but at the same time, it is one of those, now why would you do that stunt? The high five is a great opening stunt for this movie, where it's just this giant hand that goes flying in and just whacks whoever walks in. There's the sweaty cocktail, which that stunt really tested my limits. I mean, between milking a horse in number 2 and the sweaty cocktail, like, those are two stunts that really make me want to vomit. Like, they really make me go, like, oh, just thinking about them, it's gross. Hang on one second. Okay. Then there's the Lamborghini tooth pull, which was a stunt that they originally did in Jackass Number Two, but it got scrapped because the stunt was being performed on Bam's uncle, Don Vito, and by the time the movie was about to come out, Don Vito was arrested for sexually assaulting a minor. So, yeah, you can't have that in Jackass Number Two, so they pretty much scrubbed that movie, got rid of the sequence, but they did it again in Jackass 3D with Ehren McGhehey, and, God, that stunt looks so painful, and as I'm about to talk about with Jackass Forever, you feel really bad for Ehren McGhehey, because he seems to get the short end of the stick in almost every movie. But, yeah, Jackass 3D is my favorite of the Jackass movies, just because the stunts are so inventive, and again, the Poo Cocktail Supreme, I don't think can be topped, and in my opinion, has yet to be topped. So it's a fun time if you haven't seen it. So now we come to the present. Now, in terms of Jackass Forever, this movie kind of had a little bit of a handicap, because not everybody came back for this movie. Bam Margera, unfortunately, is going through a lot of substance abuse, so he was fired from the movie because he couldn't get sobered up. And then Ryan Dunn, unfortunately, died in a car crash in 2011, so it's kind of sad that those two are not in this movie. However, to kind of balance things out, they bring in some new cast members. Probably the first time that Jackass series has ever done this. You have Poopies, who made a first impression when Jackass did some Shark Week episodes. Like, he was thrown into the water and got bit by a shark. He's the cast member that I feel like really clicks with the crew more than anyone else. Then you have Zach Holmes, who is just so energetic. He's willing to do so much. You have their first black cast member, Jasper Dolphin, who is really into it as well and does some fun stunts throughout the movie. And the first woman to join the Jackass crew, Rachel Wolfson, who doesn't get a whole lot to do in this movie, but the stuff that she does do, it's kind of a good first impression in terms of Jackass. I mean, she licks a taser, which, I mean, you see in the trailer, and there's a poster of her doing that. She gets stung multiple times by a scorpion, which, that might be spoiling a lot, but she talks about it in the press tours, and there's footage of that, so it's not really that much of a spoiler. And plus, spoiling these stunts doesn't really do them justice. You have to see them for yourself. But the new cast members work really well. The opening sequence of the movie, how do I describe it? It's right up my alley, but it also features stuff that I really didn't need to see. Like, out of all the 4 Jackass movies, this is probably the most grotesque of them all. Like, there's just so many disgusting things that happen in this movie. The most disgusting of the 4. But ironically, it's not the one that got me close to puking. None of these gross things that happen can top milking a horse or drinking a sweaty cocktail. But again, the amount of grotesque stuff they do and the countless amount of dicks that are in this movie, it makes me shocked that this didn't get an NC-17, because it seems like every Jackass movie tries to top the other, and how this didn't get an NC-17 is beyond me. Like, it's almost magic how they didn't get an NC-17. And the fact that this movie is as gross as it is also makes up for the fact that the stunts, while impressive and entertaining, they aren't as creative, and they don't do a whole lot compared to the other movies, which I can't really fault the team this time around, because this was a movie that started filming during the pandemic. They shut down and then they came back, and because of the pandemic, they couldn't do stuff like go out into the ocean, go on location, go out to other countries. So they were kind of limited by the stuff they could do. But that being said, the stuff that they come up with is really entertaining. Some of them are callbacks to previous stunts, whether from the TV show or the previous films. And much like with Jackass 3D, it's fun to watch these guys much older. Like, this is 20 years after the first Jackass movie. Just seeing how they work. So it's amazing that they still manage to do a lot of the stunts that they end up doing. But at the same time, I'm like, please stop. Like, Johnny Knoxville, Steve-O, Wee Man, Ehren McGhehey, please stop right now. Just go off into the sunset, live your best lives, take in those Jackass residual checks, and just let the new cast take over. Let Poopies, Zach, Jasper, and Rachel lead the new generation of Jackass crew members as they bring in new faces. Because if they make a 5th movie and some of the old guys are back again, I'm just so worried that they're gonna die at some point. And that almost happened with Johnny Knoxville. So, I mean, the fact that they still managed to keep going at the age that they are clearly shows that they have more stamina than I do, and I'm only 30. In terms of the stunts themselves, like I said, they're not as out there as some of the previous movies, and that's kind of hindered by the limitations of filming during a pandemic, but they're still funny as hell. And like I said earlier, Ehren McGhehey really gets the short end of the straw, because he is involved in some of the most painful and just rough stunts, like the cup test. Like, oh my god, I feel so bad for him, because he just has to get kicked in the nuts several times over. And then that sequence with the bear. If I was in Ehren McGhehey's shoes, I probably would have died of a heart attack in that sequence. It's so terrifying to be strapped in a chair with honey and salmon all over you and have this bear come in, because you would be absolutely terrified for your life. Like, oh my god, we're filming a stunt and this bear is going to eat me alive on camera. How, no, I'm out. I quit. So yeah, that isn't the final stunt, but it's one of the stunts that happens towards the end. And it definitely, it may have been the highlight of the movie for me. So Jackass Forever is, at this point, with 4 Jackass movies, you know what to expect from this one. Again, it's not my favorite, but it's one that absolutely demands to be seen with an audience. It's unbelievably hilarious, but it's also not for those who have a weak stomach. So just be warned if you go into it. But if you go into this, or if you see any of the other Jackass movies, and you go in with a bad attitude or with your nose stuck up in the air, the only jackass is you. I hate to be that person, but it's like you knew what you were going to expect going into it, so why are you going in with a bad attitude? That's my mini rant. Jackass Forever is a lot of fun. For all these movies, I'd say they're good, but they're not great. Out of the 4 of them, Jackass 3D is my favorite. Number 2 is my second favorite, just because the stunts in both those movies are the best for me. Jackass Forever is my third favorite because it's just as funny, and seeing it in a theater with a big crowd was definitely a great experience. And then Jackass the movie is my least favorite, mainly because it has that TV look to it and doesn't have much of a movie look the way the other films do. But still, at the end of the day, they're all very fun, very good, but you have to be in the right mindset to watch them and maybe have the right stomach to stomach some of these sequences. So there you go. That's my review for all 4 Jackass movies. Again, I didn't review 2.5 or 3.5 because I don't remember them as much as these 4. So I want to know what you guys think about the Jackass movies. If you've seen them, what did you think? What do you think about Jackass Forever specifically, since it just came out? And how do you rank these movies? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for the theatrically released Jackass movies. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, go check out my theme park channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day, and take care of yourselves.